Hi, my name is Maria, and this is my story. I walked into the room, my father lost in his cups, a bottle of liquor clutched tightly by one hand as he stared blankly into the turned-off television. Dad? I started, staring at him with heavy concern, my heart aching deeply as if it was stabbed.
You won't understand, my daughter. You won't, he replied, looking at me with a heavy stare, and I could sense no love from his gaze. Only disdain, a sense of loathing. My memory echoed in my head, how much he smiled when Mom was around, how much he worked to keep everything going. We weren't rich by any means, but we got by just fine. We were happy, and that was enough. But not anymore. The person before me, he didn't look like my dad. His cheeks were taut against his skull, his eyes were cloudy as if delusional, and his shirt was covered in various fluids like he'd just thrown up what he was drinking onto himself. The room itself was a mess, with random food scattered everywhere, shattered pictures, and messy clothes. I didn't mind it. I knew he was grieving. This went on for months, and I'd long since moved on from Mom's passing, though it still haunted me. Dad, however, never did, only growing even more bitter with each passing day. I took up the housework, and Dad, for months, never left the house. He was always sitting in his spot and staring as if contemplating life itself. One day, as I was cleaning up the living room, he grabbed me by the t-shirt with a jolt, almost lifting me off my feet and cutting off my breathing. "It should have been you!" he roared in an outrage, anger welling in his face. "She should have never gone! It's all your fault!" he bellowed, slamming me to the ground and walking out of the door. I never saw him since, so I held down the house as best as I could, following what I knew to the best of my abilities, but what he said rang in my ears like a church bell, and self-hatred began to well inside me. For what felt like years, he disappeared. I ate what I could, I rationed what I could, and I waited. I stopped going to uni, to school, and to hold down the house. I did what I could to keep everything running, but it was no use. Eventually, the companies cut the house from electricity, gas, water. I was left alone on the kitchen floor, wondering when my dad, if he would ever return. One day, I woke up, really starving, clutching my notebook from when I was younger. It was well used, worn out from years of journaling, but it held a lot of stories I'd written. Stories that my parents loved to read, and stories that I wrote for them. It was pretty much the only comfort I could find. I heard the front door open. I lurched to my feet, weak and confused. I checked the entryway, and I found Dad. After so long, he looked really well, better than when I saw him before. "Dad?" I yelled, running towards him, only for his gaze to fall upon me and a familiar sense of disdain crept in. "Oh, you're still here. I just went to pick up my things. I found a new family now, so why don't you go ahead and disappear right now?" So he waved me off, and he went into his room. I was shocked, and my eyes widened in disbelief. "What do you mean, another family? Dad, what are you talking about?" I asked, so confused. "It is what I said. I thought you were supposed to be smart," he scoffed, not even looking in my direction as he packed all his things. "But, Dad, I'm your family too, you know. I know Mom left and it burdened you, but..." I burst out. But then I stopped. He was finally looking at me, but what I saw was cold hatred. He clenched his fists and looked toward me. "Get out of this house," he said with a tone so cold it felt like I was being washed away with ice. "I'm selling it, and I don't want any more dead weight. Get out, now!" he said, raising his fists in an attempt to punch me. Before he could, I stepped back, so confused and so scared, but I knew what he meant, and it shot me like a bullet to the heart. I ran out the front door.
and the cityscape washed around me in a blur, confusing as it were. I could only run, fearing for what Dad would do to me if he found me at the house again. When my legs finally gave out, I didn't even know how far I ran, only that when I hit the sidewalk, I only felt tiredness, sadness, so much pain. It was overwhelming. I closed my eyes and waited for it to all stop, waiting for it to go away, wanting it to go away. And then I heard a voice. "Mark, what are you doing out here?" a female voice said, concern in her tone. And then a sense of familiarity came over me. I opened my eyes and looked up. Standing over me was a ginger-haired girl with noticeable freckles and blue eyes. She was worried for me, her gaze that of warmth and concern. "Ginny, why are you here?" I was so confused, looking around bewildered as I sat on the sidewalk. This is my house after all," she replied, pointing to the right, and saw it was indeed their house with its brown roof and white walls. "The real question is," she asked me, offering me a hand, "why are you out here?" She helped me up and dusted off my clothes, which looked like they haven't even been washed in months. 'Cause they hadn't. "Dad abandoned me," I could only say, my heart feeling like it had been put through a blender. "After Mom died, he blamed all of it on me, and found a new family." Jenny looked surprised, her face full of confusion. Then it turned to anger. "Maria, how could he do that? That's the worst! Both of you were going through pain, and yet he abandoned you to solve his own problems and threw you to the curb? That's awful!" I couldn't help but feel a little relieved. Someone was standing up for me and standing with me. It'd been the first time someone actually understood me in a long time. Ginny let me inside her house and then lent me some of her mom's clothes. Her family welcomed me and listened to my tale, and all of them gave the same reaction that Ginny did. "Your dad is a scumbag," her father said, clenching his fists. "You suffered a lot, huh, little one? You should rest now," her mom said, offering me a room in their house. "Want to play some games with me to feel better?" Ginny's younger brother said, offering me a controller. I nodded, smile creeping onto my face as I played with him. The days drew on faster than I imagined. They let me mourn and listened to my woes. They even inspired me to write my story into a manuscript for a novel, something I always wanted to do. I poured my emotions into every page, every scene, writing my heart out till I went dry and the story was completed. Throughout it all, Ginny stood by my side, encouraging me and hugging me whenever I felt like crumbling. In return, I helped her too, tutoring her in the subject she wasn't that great at and being there for her when she felt down too. When the novel was finally done, Ginny's dad sent it to a printing company that he knew, and before long my writing went out to people and it was a massive hit. People loved my story. Ginny was ecstatic. And before long, we grew to be more than friends. We even developed feelings for each other, and Ginny's dad teased us about it. "I knew you two would get together," he teased, laughing at us jokingly. "Dad," Ginny said, her face flushed almost the same color as her hair, in which I chuckled about. Then I heard the doorbell ring, and I ran to get it. "I got it," I said as I ran. The door opened, and outside was my dad, his gaze sullen and worn, his clothes torn to bits. I couldn't even look at him, my hands balling into fists. "Hey there, my daughter. It's been a while," he said, looking as if he was just asking to be pitied. "Hey, what do you want?" I said, trying my best not to punch him right then and there. "It seems the new family I found was only using me, trying to get me to buy them more and more stuff. I got into some debt. I came to you asking for forgiveness and help," he said, raising a hand to me, palm up as if asking for alms. "You're asking me for help? After all you did? After abandoning me?" I said, almost shouting and laughing. All he could do was look at his feet in shame, realizing all that he'd done. Gone was the love that I had for my dad, and I never looked back. "Go to your new family and ask them for help. You abandoned our family a long time ago," I said, shutting the door behind me and out of my life for good. I was happy now. I was free now. I loved him, but he never came back for me. So I looked forward with Ginny beside me, and I never looked back.